My favorite television show of all time is Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Watching Mr. Rogers as a kid taught me to be true to myself. I learned to understand my emotions. I learned to be proud of myself. And yet, through all of that, I learned to have love and compassion for others who are different than me. But my favorite part of the show was not actually Mr. Rogers. It's the music from the show.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
See, Fred Rogers made an unusual choice to hire this virtuosic wizard of a jazz piano player named Johnny Costa to be his musical director. And as that musical director, Johnny's job was to take these simple, childlike melodies that Fred himself had written and arrange them for the show. When I first sat down to try and figure out Johnny's playing style, I was super overwhelmed. I mean, listen to how complex this music is.
My neighbor, won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
The notes go by at 1,000,000 miles an hour, using complex chords and rhythms. Trying to transcribe any of those ideas was impossible. I would sit down here at the piano, playing the recording at half speed, and I was just desperately trying to pick out the individual notes, but it was maddening and it was fruitless. And yet, the more that I listened, the more that I started to recognize these sounds as things that I had heard before from other musicians. See, when Costa was in high school, he was introduced to the playing of Art Tatum. That music inspired him to put down the accordion that he was playing and pick up the piano instead, and he spent much of his high school years learning transcriptions of Tatum's playing. See, Art Tatum was famous for his fast, colorful fills that sound like this. And when we listen to Costa play, you can hear those same types of fills here in Mr. Rogers.
You be mine. It's
And as crazy as it sounds, you and I can actually play lines like this ourselves. Of course, Art Tatum was technically amazing, but these fills that he's playing are not quite as hard as they first sound. After you break them down, they're actually pretty achievable. So try this. Let's take a basic G7 chord, but let's move the note G on top. To give us a little bit more jazzy flavor, let's take the fifth, D, and let's move it up a half step to E flat. And if you look at this closely, you'll see that this is a dominant seventh with a flat 13. Let's use our right hand to play the B and the E flat, and we're going to use our left hand to play the F and the G. Now when we want to play this fill, we can come down the piano, hand over hand, just like this. Now after a little bit of practice, this is actually not too hard to do quickly. Now just to make this crazier, Art Tatum and Johnny Costa would do all of this with just one hand, just their right hand, because in their left hand, they were doing something else inspired by another great pianist of the time. I'll introduce you to that pianist in just a second, but first I want to show you a tool that I use to practice these ideas. It's important that we have good backing tracks to practice along with, and what's more authentic than playing along with the original recording? So today's sponsor, Lalal.ai, lets us do just that. See, check this out. I can drag the music from the TV show into the website, and then I can pick what my instrument is from this dropdown. Once I click the button, about 5 seconds later, Lala is going to give me 2 different tracks. This one on the bottom has the piano part removed from it. And the one on top has another one with the piano part isolated. You can even blend these two together however you see fit, or you could download the tracks individually to your computer. It's really an amazing opportunity to be able to play along with the other guys in Johnny Costa's trio. And I've really given Lala a challenge today by giving it old footage from a VHS tape of Mr. Rogers. And it did a pretty good job. When you give it a better quality recording though, it separates these instruments nearly perfectly. And Lalal does a lot more than this, actually. I really like their new tool that removes reverb and echo from their recordings. I've been using that to clean up the room audio from my own gigs, and it comes out great. You can learn more and get some free credits to try Lalal for yourself by using the link down in the description. Thank you, Lalal, for sponsoring this part of the video. Johnny Costa loves to play a stride left hand, and to me, his playing sounds particularly inspired from players like Fats Waller. These players took the oompa left-hand style that we would hear in ragtime, and they elevated it to be more colorful and playful. See, listen to the left hand here in Fats Waller's famous recording of Ain't Misbehavin'. You can hear Johnny Costa playing the same types of ideas here in Mr. Rogers as well.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine?
Now, if you've played some ragtime before, you might recognize the alternating bass note with the simple chord on top, like this. Stride players like Costa, though, would introduce a swing feel. Rather than just alternate 1 and 5 in the bass, they would play more melodic ideas, perhaps walking a scale, or even breaking the repeated bass chord pattern, or even syncopate where the chords fall in the rhythm. Now, in the ragtime era, pianists would play the bass note down here in octaves, doubling the note in the left hand. But to make this more colorful, Costa would spread out these notes by 2 more keys, and he would play tenths in his left hand instead. And instead of just playing these simple 3-note chord triads on top, he would play more colorful 4 or even 5-note voicings that have extensions and alterations in them. When you put all that together, you get something that sounds kind of like this. Maybe if I keep at this for another 30 years, I'll be able to play this as smoothly as Johnny Costa does. Listen carefully to how different this next section is.
Just like you, I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you.
See here, Costa abandons what he was doing, the Art Tatum stuff, in his right hand. And he's also given up the stride Fats Waller left hand. But instead his hands have come together into the middle range of the piano, and they're playing these lush block chords. This was a sound popularized by George Shearing. You can hear him play that in this live performance of Bel Air. And here, if we listen again to Johnny Costa playing for Mr. Rogers, you can hear how this George Shearing sound was an inspiration.
Just like you, I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood.
The secret of this sound is the closed position voicing. The pinky of our right hand is going to play the melody, and then we're going to double the melody with our left hand an octave lower than that. All of the notes of the chord have to fit between these 2 notes, and George Shearing would cram 3 or 4 notes in there. And to get that lush sound, George would alternate chords like a major 6th with a diminished chord. And there are some important subtleties about which chords you pick and at what time. I've got a whole video on this channel up here showing those techniques in more detail if you're interested in that. After a little bit of practice, you can play Mr. Rogers' melodies using this technique too, like this. Costa wasn't just a great jazz player, but his music was deeply shaped by great classical composers. This fusion of jazz and classical elements gave his style kind of a unique, timeless quality, and it's worth exploring and studying. And as I listen to his catalog, I hear inspiration taken from Beethoven, from Chopin, from other composers of that time. In particular, I hear him playing simple scales up or down the piano, but he's harmonizing those in his other hand like this. These harmonized scales are often taught by classical teachers, but they can be quite technically difficult to play. We could take a simple major scale like this, and then in our left hand, we could harmonize it with an interval beneath it, perhaps running them in thirds or in sixths. When you combine this technique with some of the best practices in jazz, like using scales to aim for the thirds of chords, you get something that sounds like this. In fact, his famous opening line of the show is exactly this idea. It's just a basic scale that's played by adding several harmonized notes underneath it. I think it's important to remember that Johnny Costa was playing this live in the studio.
It's a beautiful day.
It was a live performance each and every single time, and I never heard him play it the same way twice. Every time he would change the harmony in some way, play different fills, different motifs. When Costa was first hired by Fred Rogers, he was 46 years old. Like all of the great musicians, Costa's style was directly influenced by the musicians who came before him and his peers. By the time Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood had premiered, Johnny had spent decades learning those stylistic trademarks of George Shearing and Art Tatum and Fats Waller and a whole bunch of others. And over time, those ideas came together into something new and innovative. And this signature Mr. Rogers sound is the result of decades of evolution in Costa's own playing style. And this is what we should aspire to ourselves. We should learn to mimic the sounds of the greats, including the great Johnny Costa. not just to understand them up here intellectually, but to actually build a technique in our hands to be able to play them. And as we do that, over time, our own style will naturally develop. Who knows, 50 years from now, there might be some young kid who's inspired by us and wants to learn to play in our style, just like you and I are inspired by Mr. Rogers. And totally related to this, I would encourage you to watch this video next. In this video, I share why I think it's still important for us to learn the old-time jazz standards.